دعاة رب السماء يا من صنعتم في الأرض نورا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I mean, I know that people insist on calling me Sheikh, but I'm closer to a milkshake than a Sheikh. I just prefer to be called brother. But anyway, subhanAllah, I was brought here by Hearts for Palestine, and may Allah reward them for their efforts, to this part of the world, almost the furthest part away from England. That's probably why many people come here, because of the campaign for Palestine. And I remarked during the fundraiser that was organized by Hearts for Palestine that the furthest land from Palestine, apart from French Polynesia, but the first landmass you can see from the sky was New Zealand. And I also noted that the name for the MASJID, right, the second MASJID to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala built on this earth, is MASJID al-Aqsa, the furthest MASJID. And so I said that what the world sees by you Kiwi Muslims and your work and your affection and your feeling and sentiment and regard to the Palestinians is they see from the furthest land to the furthest mosque that the Palestinians get support. That people who are the furthest away still think of them, still work for them, still help them and support them. And this kind of brought the issue, and this is, I suppose, why, many people have seen there's a revival in the Muslim world of activism, of doing some kind of wanting to change things. And we live under many regimes currently are concerned what the Muslim populations are actually thinking of them and what they might do, because they're seeing that while the Palestinians are being massacred brutally in the tens of thousands, these regimes aren't doing anything about it. And people are seeing that, why aren't you saving our brothers and sisters in Palestine? Why aren't you doing something about it? So it's the temperature is being turned up in the Muslim world, and it's causing the Muslims to bubble. Right? As we see, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, paraphrase, that the Ummah is like one body. When part of it feels pain, the rest of it responds with sleeplessness and fever. The temperature rises up. And you get that temperature when your body responds to an infection. That there's something going wrong and your body has to fight that infection. And the infection there is the oppression and the massacre of the Palestinians. That's the infection that we need to deal with. But not just in the Muslim world, but because you guys are based in a Western country, although technically New Zealand is not in a geographic West, right? In fact, it's probably the eastmost you can get apart from French Polynesia and so on and so forth. But in the West, you see that Muslims are active every weekend, marching and demonstrating and putting pressure on the government. Why? Why are we doing that in the West when we're not doing that for perhaps the Kashmiris or the Uyghurs and so on and so forth? And some Zionists like to argue, saying this just shows that you just hate Jews because you're only concerned when Jews are involved. Say no. You see, the Uyghurs and the Kashmiris, India and China does not have an umbilical cord attached to them from the West. The West isn't giving them free money and weapons, right? If the West stops giving money, well, there's no money they give to India or China. They trade, but that's about it. They don't give weapons to these countries, basically. If they were to cut it off, nothing would happen to these countries, right? But the state of Israel is very small, right? And this quote-unquote state of Israel, it depends completely for its existence, really, on American support. American weapons, American money, and the weapons and some money and some things that this relations with every other Western country there is. Right. That's why Zionists have very strong lobbies in many Western countries to maintain this support. to these countries. Now you might say, okay, but what can we do against that? Like this, how can we challenge this? How can we change this? Because, you know, these lobbies are very strong. They have very strong financial investment. For example, AIPAC, which is an American kind of, you could say, lobby group, which is influences American elections so much so that presidential candidates have to give lectures and speeches to AIPAC promising support to Israel to aid their election campaigns. And recently it was declared they put aside $120 million just to undermine candidates for Senate and House Representatives they don't like. Not just to put money for those that they do want, but just as a little pot, to undermine those they don't want. Right? That's the kind of money they have. And they've put, this is almost a public record, it's nothing hidden about this. And you might think, how do we challenge this? How do we go up against this? Right? And how comes, despite all this, Muslims are still going out, and not just Muslims, but many non-Muslims joining us, many people from different religions. There are many Jews alongside us as well, going out and demonstrating and protesting and so on, and putting that pressure. And in the West, you see this conflict is now going on. The rising tide amongst the people who are concerned with what Israel is doing on behalf of Western support, and the politicians who appear to be irrationally supporting Israel no matter what they do, right? Even then, they're like, no, they're not kind of withering or what have you in this, but because of that public pressure, they have to give some slight words to placate the masses. Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, we're concerned what's happening in Gaza. Oh, thank you for your concern. And meanwhile, they just continue to give more weapons and money. So what do we do? Right? What can we do? What does history tell us? Anyone here from South Africa? Any South Africans? No one here from South Africa? Do you know anyone? Any South Africans? Not too far away? Yeah. For many decades, South Africa had the same support of the West. The West all supported South Africa. Nelson Mandela was locked up in jail for over 30 years or so. He was declared to be a terrorist. Right. In fact, he was on the American list of terrorists, so much so that even after he became president of South Africa, and he was going to do a diplomatic presidential visit to America, they forgot to take him off the list. Oops, sorry, I had to take him off the list just to allow him to come to America. They forgot, right? Because he was on the official list of terrorists, right? In South Africa was a situation where they had a very tiny white European-originated minority, and the majority of people were native black South Africans. They lived there, right? They were for centuries and centuries, tens of thousands of years. And these white guys, in essence, were Dutch settlers, Dutch colonialists, the children of Dutch colonialists. So they wanted to have elections and democracy, but you can't have elections when the majority of people are not your ethnic group, and you still be in control, still be the ethnic group that rules. So instead, they made fake small states in South Africa called Bantustans. And they said, well, you're a member of this state and this smaller state and this smaller state, so you don't get to vote in the national elections because you have your own small country, a little area that we've designed for you to be there, and then we'll keep our areas for us, and we'll win the elections because the South African elections is only for areas which are the white areas, for example. So that's what they did, and for decades and decades, the West supported it. Right? The West was good allies. They supplied weapons. They gave support. That was until there was a movement in the West showing how these white minority treated the black majority, how they kept them in poor conditions, how they deprived them, they paid them a pittance for their work. They were not given water. They're not given even, their townships were not supplied by electricity. They were basically living in stone ages, and how they were deprived. How they were brutalized by the police. The police would shoot loads of black people on the street, doesn't matter, whatever, they're just black people, who cares, quote unquote, as long as they're not whites. And that was it. There was no justice. There was no justice for them, right? They were shot. They'll be tortured in police jails, or there was even torture camps, right, for the black population. And it was very brutal. It was very nasty. And initially, of course, the white South Africans government was like, no, we're not doing all this stuff. No, these are just security operations. We're just maintaining our security. These are just criminals we're dealing with. We're just suppressing riots. When peaceful demonstrations by black people would be called riots, and they'd shoot them. Right? They say, no, some people in the audience or in the demonstrations, they'll be shooting us. We just shot back, right? But despite all their propaganda, and this is before the internet, by the way. For you kids, you might think, before the internet, what was that? Was that even real? Was there a world before the internet? Before the internet, there was a movement of people highlighting what was happening to black people in South Africa. And despite the fact that even the Western governments were trying to deny it, they maintained a momentum, a movement, highlighting, raising the issue, saying that, well, if the West believes in democracy, they say they believe in democracy, right? But they're not living up to their claims when it comes to South Africa, because the blacks are not part of the electorate. They can't vote. They're not part of the democracy. So at least be consistent with your own system. And the pressure got more and more and more and more until the West couldn't hold it back anymore, and they had to change their policy towards South Africa. They had to pressure it, and they began to pressure South Africa. Okay, we have to stop trading with you until you change your apartheid system, your system that separates blacks from whites. If you don't stop this, we can't trade with you, we can't supply you weapons, we can't do any of this stuff. And eventually the pressure got so much, despite the fact that the white South Africans say, but if we have a democracy, the majority will be the black parties will come into power, and they'll kill us and they'll massacre us. They'll say all this kind of stuff, right? Black Zionists say today, if we have all democracy for everyone in Palestine, they're going to massacre us and kill us, right? And guess what happened when democracy was fully granted to everybody? There was no massacre. There was no ethnic cleansing of whites or genocide of whites or any of that kind of stuff. It was a peaceful transition, right? And that all happened because of people campaigning in the West, demonstrating, spreading information, like those big, massive posters about Palestine, past and present. They spread that information everywhere, spread awareness of what's happening. Right? That's what happened. And that was despite the fact that white South Africans had lobbies in the West. Right? There's also a similar situation. Anyone here from Algeria? Any Algerians? No Algerians? No? It's like a South African and Algerian free town or something. You can't. No? Okay. What you don't know, if any of you know about Algerians, are Algeria actually had a very nasty situation. Like in the 1960s, up to 1960s. 200 years ago, France invaded Algeria, took it over, and they didn't just declare it to be a colony. They declared it to be part of France. It was officially recognized that Algeria was actually France, not just a colony or a separate territory. No, it was France. And they sent 1 million white French colonialists to Algeria to begin settling Algeria. Right? Algeria had about 9 million people, so 1 million of them were French settlers. And the same things happened, right? The Algerians resisted, brutal police action, torture, killing, some other things, which because there's kids here, I'm not going to say, happened to the women. But there was some really nasty things against what was happening to Algerians. And the settlers, the French settlers, had a massive lobby group in France that was pushing for France to maintain the occupation of North Africa and never ever leave. It actually got so much that when Charles de Gaulle, the president of France, wanted to actually leave, they tried to actually have him assassinated. They were that powerful, right? They tried to have him assassinated. Anyway, but what happened, right? The Algerians resisted, right? And they resisted, and there was a armed resistance, and there was a political resistance. So some of them engaged in insurgency tactics. They would detonate bombs in Algiers, in the colonial areas, and others would engage in peaceful political activism, right? Both in the West and in Algeria. But they'll obviously, despite the fact they get arrested and shot, but what have you. But after consistent activism, political activism, and highlighting what the French government is doing in Algeria, in France, this activism in France, the French people lost the will to continue the occupation of France, of Algeria. And they said, we have to leave. We have to leave. And there was negotiation, and the France said, okay, but what are you going to do with all the white settlers? You're going to kick them out? And Algerians said, no, they have a choice. We'll give them Algerian citizenship. Okay, so give them, and they did. They said, we'll offer them Algerian citizenship. 99% of them just said, no, we'll go back to France. Yeah, and they left. And that was how it was resolved. Right. So that was something that most people don't realize. Algeria could have still been France today if it wasn't for persistent awareness campaigning, political campaigning in the West. It works. So what can we do in the West? How do we continue to help the Palestinians as best as we can? How do we effect decisive change? It's about sabr. You know, in the Muslim world today, the most misunderstood concept is, one of the misunderstood concepts is sabr. Sabr, translated as patience, is usually told to you to mean like, don't do anything, just wait, right? Don't do anything, just wait, right? And yet we see a hadith where, Sahaba is instructed that when you're fighting in jihad, and you're fighting, against the enemy, and there's a lot of trials you have to go through. It's very difficult. You're going on campaigning for marching hundreds of miles in the heat and so on. It says, to paraphrase one narration, go in fighting in jihad and have sabr. But jihad is not doing nothing, right? It's doing something and having sabr. And I think the best translation of sabr is steadfastness. Like committing to an action and sticking with it until you see success. Persistence, right? Not doing nothing. No, do something and have sabr. Not do nothing and have sabr. Okay? And for us, it's the sabr of persistently raising awareness about what the Palestinians are going through in the West. It's a game of wills. Whose will is going to break first? The Zionists? Well, not the Zionists, rather, but you could say, yes, the Zionists are going to continue their misinformation campaign, but are we going to break our will first, or are we going to break the will of the government in the various Western countries and finally make them do what they should be doing? All right. So whose will is going to break first? Right. The Palestinians are they depend on Allah first and foremost, of course. But after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they depend on us. Right. Are you going to be steadfast for them? Are you going to continue for them? Right. What happens after, let's say the state that Israel withdraws from Gaza, if they ever do, that is. But Gaza is still under blockade like it was before. We're going to just relax, go back to our normal lives, and that's it? We're going to leave them alone? No, because all this happened because of the continuing oppression the Palestinians face. It didn't begin on October the 7th. When the bombardment of their land and so on, the killing of them, it's been happening all before that. Just 2 weeks before October the 7th, Gaza was bombed by an Israeli air raid. Just the year 2023, before October 7th, over 300 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank, and there's no Hamas government there. Right? They just killed your children. Imagine your kids killed by the police in New Zealand. Just because maybe they had a spray can, maybe they had a stone, and they were just chucking stones, and the police takes out a gun and shoots them. Oh, he has a stone. Stones are dangerous, so we can kill him. Right? How would you accept to live under that scenario where your kids can be killed? No. Right. And by the way, I try to find there's not really any record of a police or an Israeli soldier going to jail for more than a year or two for any killing of any Palestinian. It's like it's just a slap on the wrist, if that. You know, at best they go to jail for 1 year. That's like the best case scenario, and it's rare. Right? Usually they say they'll give an excuse and say, well, there's an excuse, so, you know, we weren't there. Who's to say what happened? We'll just take whatever the soldier says. Imagine the New Zealand police could shoot anyone they want, and you could only prosecute them if they admit that they did it deliberately with no reason behind it, right? Because every police officer is going to give an excuse for what he did, right? Isn't it? Right? Usually what you need, you have to get maybe a camera or you get witnesses and whatever. But imagine no Palestinian witnesses are taken by the Israeli army. They don't care about Palestinian witnesses. So the Palestinian witnesses, we all saw that soldier kill this kid and say, yeah, well, you're Palestinian, who cares, right? Yeah. And the fellow soldiers aren't going to tell on their friend. So that's what happens, right? That's what happens. So it's a situation that no one can accept. So as Muslims, we need to continue and escalate an information war against the propaganda which has been launched by Zionists to misrepresent, to make it look like it's complicated, the situation. It's not complicated, but they're using this. You need to fight against this, and you need to, your target is the New Zealand people. Right? You need to get to them, into their minds, into their heads, and give them the truth of what's happening. That's who you are aiming to look at. You're not hoping that the leaders of New Zealand, through the kindness of their hearts, are going to change them. If they had kindness in their hearts and were really sincere, they would have done it anyway. They know what's going on, right? It's not them your target, it's the people. Get to the people, inform the people. Raise awareness amongst the people. The people pressure the government. The strongest force in human society is public opinion. The strongest force. That has changed everything. Right? Not elections, not these things, not that. Actual public opinion. So that would be the one point. And I'll end with, you could say, I think, a second point, and I think this is actually something that we all need to hear, and is actually quite vital. And that is, and it's the big elephant in the room, as they say, the Muslim world is in a very problematic situation, putting it very mildly. Everyone would agree here, yeah, the Muslim world is backward, we're weak, we're divided, there's no political will to help the Palestinians. I mean, the Saudis and the others were going to normalize with Israel, right? They were going to normalize with Israel up in, before this thing happened. They were already having normalization with many countries, but while the Palestinians were still continuing to suffer. They weren't waiting for the Palestinian issue to be resolved or before they started to normalize. There's no political will there to help the Palestinians amongst the elites, or at least the rulers themselves. And why is that? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that the Muslim world is backward? It's faced, politically unstable. We're not dynamic. We used to lead technology and science. Now we don't anymore. What do you think happened? Right? Are we following the wrong deen? Is that the case? No, it's not. That's not the case, because we were following this deen and we were leading the world. Right? So the question isn't the deen of Islam. Then that's not the problem. Then the problem is obviously the Muslims. But are Muslims today a different kind of human being to like the Sahabas? Like the Sahabas were like a more evolved human being. They had superpowers, or they just were different organs, maybe different genetics, perhaps, than the humans today in the Muslim world. Are we different humans? Aliens, maybe? No. So same humans, same deen. So what's going on then? What's happened? What's the issue? Right? Some people say, the Muslim world, we're weak, we're cowardly, it's a big, and our leaders are corrupt, they say. I say, well, that's a big coincidence, because, so you're saying for the last 100 years, just by pure coincidence, every single Muslim, you're saying born in the Muslim world, or the vast majority of them, just happen to be cowardly and corrupt and what have you. That's just, we just like born like that or something. It's the last 100 years, something in the water supply has made us like this, right? No. It's actually something a lot more straightforward than that. We don't have an understanding of our deen or of life itself. And you might say, what do you mean don't understand our deen? Like, I recite the Quran, I read books of Aqidah with long list of Aqidah points I have to adopt. Like, what is the misunderstanding? Well, I could blame colonialism and how colonialism changed our education system. I could go there. But to be honest and to be fair, the Muslim world was declining for the last 400 years intellectually. Something else was going on with us. Not colonialism just made it 10 times worse. And that is that as Muslims, we got accustomed to comfort. We got accustomed to doing nothing, to being like just enjoying life. But more importantly, over this time, we lost our purpose in life. And you might think, what do you mean lost our purpose? I know what Islam is, right? No, everyone is taught. I've seen after 20 years of trying to analyze the Muslim world, say what's going on, what's happening here, what's the issue here? I see Muslims are taught, these kids will most likely, not maybe these kids in particular, but kids throughout the whole Muslim world, and when you were growing up, you were taught Islam is part of your life. Islam is part of your life, but it's not your purpose in life. Your purpose in life is a whole list of things that your parents need you to do. Be successful, which looks like impressing society by having maybe a nice house, nice car, maintain your family, tribe, or clan's reputation, have lots of children if required, get a nice job or get a big income, get lots of influence in society, lots of street cred in society, a whole list of things that you're meant to be achieving. And, oh yeah, by the way, while you're doing all this, just make sure you're also fasting and praying. And if you can, try to be truthful. But if you can't get these other things because you're being truthful, then you can lie sometimes because it's okay. Sometimes you have to, right? That's how it's taught, right? It's like, I don't know if you call this we have something called a CV in the UK. I don't know if you use the same term. It's where basically it's your list of your career, what you've done, your achievements, right? In America, they call it a resume, right? So like some students, when they leave university, they make a CV out of their work experience or whatever, and they kind of, let's say, exaggerate a little bit. They add a bit of extra. They say, it just needs to get a bit of an advantage. Otherwise, I won't get a job. If I won't get a job, I'm a failure. So I failed at life, right? I'll be a failure, and then Andrew Tate will just basically hate me. So can't let Andrew Tate look down on you. So in the Muslim world, this is what it is. Of course, you're going to have people lying a lot and deceiving a lot, because being honest is a disadvantage when everyone else has to lie to get ahead, because these other things your parents told you need to do. How are you going to get successful in life if you're not going to lie? Don't worry, Allah will understand, because these are other things you have to achieve in life. So Allah will understand. That's how it's told, isn't it? So are you surprised there's going to be that corruption in the Muslim world? I don't think it's some kind of big coincidence in the Muslim mindset that Muslims, in many in the Muslim world, they have all these sins they commit. I think it's a product of the rules of society they were taught. And of course, people say, well, why is that the case? Say, well, ask yourself, why is anyone here today, maybe not you guys, but why is anyone here today Muslim? Why is anyone in the Muslim world Muslim? Why are these kids here? They'll call themselves Muslim, which I hope you do. They'll all say, where did you first hear of Islam from? My parents. Okay, so why are you Muslim? Well, my parents told me about this stuff. Okay, so you're Muslim because of your parents, right? The Quraysh were pagan because their parents taught them to be pagan. And if their parents and also general society, I'm not blaming only parents, it could be society, their clan, their locality, whatever you want to call it. If they're Muslim because of their parents, then don't be surprised when they don't go any further than what they saw their parents doing. Right? So their parents told them, if you're Muslim because your parents, and your parents told you there's a whole bunch of other things that is your purpose in life, such as you have to be successful in this, then these other things are just going to be just as important to them as Islam. And if there's a clash, right? If there's a clash, they're going to pick the aspects which are not Islamic. Why is that? Because the only thing they've ever taught about Islam is about ibadah, about prayer, about reciting the Quran. The meaning of the Quran not so important. Just the recitation is best. Right? In fact, their recitation was so good that it made the Sahabas think their recitation was nothing by comparison. Nothing. Does anyone know who they are? Sorry? The Khawarij. Right? Described as the dogs of hellfire. Yeah, because they were so much about looking absolutely perfection and all these small minor bits. But on the real issues, they were corrupted by arrogance and a whole number of other things I'm not going to get into. So clearly, that means that the Sahaba's tajweed, their pronunciation of the Quran, wasn't perfect. Because if it was perfect, you couldn't have anyone that was better than you, is it? Right? So they didn't say, I have to perfect my tajweed of Quran. That wasn't the Sahaba's motivation. Their motivation was, I need to perfect implementing the message of the Quran. Right? That's my thing. And so, if you're taught that Islam is about things to do with the akhirah, and that your purpose in life is also to do with things with the dunya and things that you have to achieve in this dunya, otherwise you're a loser. And if you're not achieving those things because you can't lie, then you'll compromise the Islamic requirement for you to be truthful and honest, because you have to achieve those dunya things that your parents told you have to achieve. That's why. That's why they're going to be corrupt. That's why now everyone says wallahi, wallahi, wallahi all the time in the Muslim world, like it's water. Right? In fact, the Sahabas would be suspicious of the person that says wallah, wallah, uqsam billah, and so on and so forth all the time. Because a liar does that because they want desperately to be believed. Yeah. When the Sahabas had to swear by Allah on something, it was rare and very serious. Rare. You're meant to just accept the word of someone, right? So I spent time, instead of just, for my many years, just looking at the Muslim world saying, oh, look how backward it is, blah, 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 whatever. No, I wanted to know why. Why is it? Specifically, what's the psychological reason, the sociological reason, the economic reason behind it? And I came to the conclusion that the solution to this is that Muslims have to learn Islam as their purpose in life. Sounds simple to say, doesn't it? But hear me out on this, right? And we'll end on this bit. What is a purpose in life? Can anyone tell me, when I ask this out to the audience now, what is a purpose in life? What do you think a purpose that looks like? Do you raise your hand, or you're just...
Worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No, what is a purpose in life? Not... Because see, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every Muslim will tell you that, but what does it mean? What is a purpose in life? Sorry? A routine. Okay, that's one answer. Anyone else? What is a purpose in life?
To prepare yourself for the day of judgment.
But I said, what is a purpose in life, not the purpose in life? Huh?
Test.
A
Test.
test. It's just a test. Anyone else? What is a purpose in life? There's a reason why I said A and not D. All right. Anyone else? Go ahead. I'll say there's no wrong answers, but technically there are wrong answers. But go ahead anyway. Sorry? To be successful. What is success?
Depends on how you define it.
Actually, you know what? This is a very good opportunity now. I haven't done this before. One of you guys, tell me, what has your parents told you is your purpose in life? What are you here to do? Just tell me all the things your parents told you you need to do in life. Not shaming any parents, by the way. I'm just being illustrative. What did the parents tell you? What, just to play? If only that was the case. What? Tell me, you look like you have something to answer. What did your parents tell you should do in life? You should go to Jannah. Okay, how?
Be a good Muslim.
Be a good Muslim, okay. And how do you be a good Muslim?
Achieve everything.
Achieve everything. Like what?
Like the list that they tell you to do.
What, sorry?
The list that they tell you to do.
To do what they tell you to do. Isn't that illustrative what I just said? And what will parents tell you to do? Do your homework? I don't know if you have homework just yet, but do your homework and tidy your room. Yeah, clean up. Yeah? Right? A whole list of things that they tell you to do. Interesting, it's not, the answer isn't what Allah tells you to do. Right? But what your parents tell you to do. Don't worry, it's a normal answer. It's a typical one. Not blaming anyone here in particular. This is standard, bulk standard response. The reason why I asked the purpose in life, because I don't want to elongate this any further, but the reason why I asked what is a purpose in life and not the purpose in life is because if you don't know what a purpose in life is, how do you know how to live by one? Right? Is what we're missing. A purpose in life is very simple. It's basically what you are to achieve and what you were created for and how you achieve it. Right? And it's something which, outside of it, there is no other meaning. There's no other meaning to it. And if you have a purpose of life, anything else is not a purpose, has no meaning to it, right? There's no point to it, okay? So if your purpose of life is to worship Allah, everyone will say that. Okay, great. How? What do you mean worship Allah? What does that mean? Just prayer? Rituals only? No. How did the Sahabas understand the purpose of life? What did they believe? Once they became Muslim, they saw that supporting your tribe, you could identify from your tribe. Yeah, I'm from this tribe or I'm from this clan. It's no problem because that's just where you're from. But they didn't have any political allegiance to tribe anymore. It's meaningless. Which nation are you from? Arab, Ethiopian, Persian, meaningless in terms of your political allegiance or what is important to you. It's great for identification, you know. It's like asking which part of New Zealand are you from, North Island, South Island. Okay, it's great to know where you're from, but doesn't have any political significance, right? It's not important. You're not going to fight and die because you're a North Islander versus South Islander, whatever. It's meaningless, right? What about your parents' expectations of you? Well, outside of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you, it's meaningless. Except when your parents command you to do something, but only because Allah tells you to obey them when they only command you with good things, with things that Allah has not prohibited. But what is your purpose in life? Your purpose in life is to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the only criteria for good and bad, your only measurement of success or not, or failure. That's it. Doesn't mean that you don't get a good job and you don't get a good house and you don't get kids and what have you. It doesn't mean you have to throw that away. And in the Muslim world, it's perceived that if you become more serious into religion, you do i'tikaf, you just hide into a cave somewhere. You shun the modern dunya. No, right? The Sahabas were very active in the dunya, right? They sought Allah through the dunya, not by shunning the dunya. No?
Not by isolating.
Yeah, not by asceticism or isolation. So living by a purpose of life is to say, I'm going to get a good job because a good job earns me good money, and that good money, I can do so much good fi sabilillah with that money. I can support family, I can donate to where it needs to help people. I can set up a waqf or a sadaqah jariyah, or I buy a business and that business generates income, maybe by renting out properties, and that income can be a waqf for the local community or for community projects or for healthcare or something. I'm going to build a local hospital for both Muslims and non-Muslims, for Muslims to help treat the needs of Muslims, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward me and will be pleased by me and will give me mercy, because I'm showing mercy to my fellow Muslims and non-Muslims, and also for non-Muslims as a da'wah, to call for Islam. Right? That's thinking as a purpose in life. I'm going to get married. Why? Because it will help me avoid zina and bad things. But also I'm going to have children. And with that, multiply the ummah and make the next generation of leaders and soldiers and bureaucrats and diplomats and politicians and technocrats and everything else, which these children will become my sadaqah jariyah and maximize my good deeds with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to become a civil engineer, and I'm going to see if I can build new structures which are more lightweight and more material efficient, so that the Muslims in the Muslim world can build bigger and better cities with less resources and more efficiency, such that we can actually, that will be a sadaqah in itself, right? That's thinking with purpose in life. Right. That's what purpose in life looks like. That's why our civilization was dynamic. It was always improving. It was always developing. Not for the sake of improvement, but for the sake of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. That's what motivates us. It's an ideal. Right. And in the Muslim world, we have corruption in the Muslim world. Why do you have, okay, I must have ended this, but this last point, I want to explain it, because now I want to bring it back to actually a real solution. The solution is, why do we have corruption in the Muslim world with the politicians? It's very simple. It's very simple. It's not a big mystery. The leaders in the Muslim world, there's no such thing as, there's no legitimacy for in the Muslim world, because there's no higher principles or ideas that that gives them legitimacy. It's about who has power. So basically, you're a leader. You have power because these guys are influential and they support me. So if I get money from the state and resources and oil, I have to make sure they keep supporting me, right? So to do that, I have to make your life comfortable and give you extra, give you stuff. And then, of course, because you're influential and you have people that you depend on to support you, to make you invaluable to me, you have to give them extra money and give them extra kickbacks and stuff and so on and so forth. So the only way I can have power as a corrupt leader is I have to make sure that those people who are my supporters are taken care of with money from the state that should be belonging to the people, resources of the people. I have to give it. And that's the only way a power structure can be made in the Muslim world. Why? Because there's no other higher values or system or anything like this. It's just pure power. So why are you surprised there's going to be corruption? That's just how it works, because it is anarchy. Anarchy means not necessarily absence of government. It means an absence of principles, right? Whereas what's an Islamic government about? It's simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the sovereign. But the Ummah, He's given Ummah the authority. The Ummah, through a shorter process of some kind, transfers this authority into one man. This man becomes the Khalifa or Imam. He then designates the walis of different governorships in different areas around the world. And this Khalifa has the authority because the Ummah has transferred him on condition that he implements the ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rules of Allah upon us. So we have a contract, aqd al-sultaniyya. We have a contract with the leader, right? We obey you as long as you implement the law of Islam on the Muslims. And of course, what is the one key contractual requirement from him? He must be the shield of the Ummah. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said in the hadith that the Imam is the shield behind which the Ummah fight and defend itself. He didn't say there's any other kinds of shield there are. That's the shield he left us. That's why it's called, you know why it's called a Khalifa? It means a successor, one who comes after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, not succeeding in his role as a prophet, but succeeding in his role as the Imam of the Jama'ah. Right? So, if we don't have an Imam and we don't have a Jama'ah, guess what happens? We don't have a shield, and then we are attacked and we are bombarded, killed, and massacred. And it's not just Palestine, it's the Muslims in Kashmir, it's the Uyghurs in East Turkestan, it's the Rohingya, Muslims in Thailand, by the way, not as much, but they face issues from the government down there. The list just goes on and on. Muslims in Ethiopia, the list just goes on and on. Muslims in Central Africa, right? Massacred left, right, and center because we don't have unity and we don't have purpose. So I know everyone says, not everyone says, but some people have said that, well, why are you talking about this pie in the sky pipe dream of re-establishing Khilafah? Though every classical scholar for 1300 years has said it is a fard. It is an obligation. Every classical scholar. I'm not saying that, majority. No. I'm saying every single one. All right? To the point that, the Shia and the Sunni and the Ibadis, which some people say come from the Khawarij, the splits that happened between those three was not on the issue of Khilafah, was on basically who could be the Khalif or how righteous he has to be, right? But the Khilafah was the source of the initial, but no one questioned the fard, the obligation and the requirement to have Khilafah. Abu Bakr had the wars of apostasy against those who refused to recognize Khilafah after him, right? After the Prophet Muhammad, right? So it's not a pipe dream at all, because every state starts as a pipe dream until people make it a reality. Simple as that. Imagination always comes first, and then reality comes first. Then it becomes implemented. And if you'd like an example of this, and I'll end on this, I will cite you the example of the very reason I'm here today to talk about Palestine. Those who set up the state of Israel. Okay? In 1870, the Jews in Europe were there was discrimination in some places. In East Europe, they're being persecuted. In some areas, they're being discriminated against. And so this guy called Theodor Herzl rises up. He's a Zionist. He believes that the only way to rescue Jews from the persecution is they must be given a state. Jews around the world must be given a state. But they thought, and we must be, he didn't think maybe only Palestine, maybe Argentina, somewhere in the world. But soon he saw that people wanted Palestine because it has some biblical history to it, whatever. Okay, right. He didn't really care so much if that it was in Palestine, actually, funny enough. He didn't even care about the Hebrew language or anything. He was an atheist as well. He didn't care about religion. He wasn't religious, right? But it was a pipe dream. And he's very charismatic. He started to speak about it and talk about it. And soon more and more Jews in Europe took the idea this could be a possibility, right? But what can we do? The Ottomans control the land of Palestine. He went to negotiate with the Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the Ottoman Caliph. He promised him lots of money. What you guys don't know is that he actually didn't have any money. What he was going to do was he was going to promise Sultan Abdul Hamid to see how much he could buy Palestine for, and then he would see if he could fundraise for it, right? But he lied. He was like, we'll give you all this money. We'll have all this money ready, right? But he was blagging. He was, as the English say, right? He was basically just trying to be a salesman. But he got more and more Jews on board that, and they started saying, okay, we don't know if we can take Palestine just yet, but let's just send immigrants there, just to buy land and live there under Ottoman times, right? The Ottomans let them in. We'll see what happens. Just see what happens. Send more Jews from Europe into Palestine. Who knows what could happen? Let's just do it. Keep sending immigration, right? Right. So the Ottomans got caught wind. Are you guys trying to take Palestine or something? Right. So they said they actually banned immigration into Palestine. They let Jews go elsewhere, from Russian Jews and Eastern European Jews, but they went to the other parts and they went to Palestine anyway. Right. But that was the issue. And then they started to negotiate with the British, and World War I happened, and the British were fighting the Ottomans. And by the way, the Ottomans were fighting the British Empire and the Russians all at the same time, Russian Empire at the same time, and actually beat the British in 2 major battles of Gaza. Beat them back, pushed them back, right? Some would say the only thing that caused them to lose the 3rd battle for Gaza was they were attacked from behind by the Arab revolt, quote unquote, from Arabia. But we won't discuss that, right? Anyway, so then when the British were on the verge of capturing Jerusalem, the Zionists made a negotiation with with the British, said, you know what, why don't you just give us Palestine, we'll make it useful for you, we'll help control the Suez Canal on your behalf, you know, it'll mutually benefit us, you know, you want some guys there that you're friends that could do what you want. There's a few other reasons why, but I won't get into it. But then the British agreed, okay, we'll let you like go there and build a cultural home, and then eventually they allowed more migration in until the point that the Zionists became larger and larger numbers, up until World War II happened. Then more immigration came in. The Zionists only had 1/3 the population of Palestine, or was European Jewish, and then they decided to launch a war against the rest of Palestine and took as much as they could. Jordan took the West Bank, Egypt took the Gaza, and the rest we know is history. But look what happened. It went from Jews not having any political influence at all in Europe, no state, no political, not anything, just a pipe dream. And see how they had sabr on something that was actually unjust, because it's unjust to the Palestinians, right? But they're having sabr on something that was unjust, and see, just because they had sabr on something, and it was a pipe dream, but they made it into a reality by being persistent, right? So, as I told you to be persistent in advocating for Palestinian rights in the West, you also must be persistent in calling for the re-establishment and the return of the Khilafah, which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ prophesies in the Hadith will come back as a Khilafah Rashida min manhaj an-nubuwwah, on the method of the Prophet. It's prophesied to come back, right? Be part of that prophecy. You can be part of that prophecy. Be steadfast in that. And who knows, maybe you can see it in your lifetime. And even if you don't, you get the reward of a sadaqah jariyah for helping to establish something that would do so much good. Okay, barakallahu feekum.